Okay, so let's talk about the mix prep in Pro Tools to get your session running. The first thing we can do as soon as we have our session ready to go is go to the main folder, hold Option, and click and drag just to make a backup. If we need to have a new starting point, someplace to go back to, we have access to that. That way we don't have to fumble through, maybe re-downloading it again from wherever it came. Sometimes that's just problematic, or sometimes the actual session might be on a Dropbox for a short period of time. Then we're going to go ahead and open the session so we could fire away. So let's, we could open Pro Tools, double click that session, good to go. Bypass any of those elements any warnings that it's giving us. If you happen to get a missing files warning ever, there's two options. You could attempt to automatically find and relink. It'll do it in the background, or you could skip it. If you know you don't need it, that's when you're going to skip it. If you're not sure, you could just hit, automatically find and relink. You just hit OK. It's going to be working in the background on that. And if you go to the edit window by hitting Command =, the thing at the very top here that's showing a red on both the clip and the file means that we're missing both the data and an actual clip that's in session. And the little spinning wheel just means that it's trying to find it. It's searching in the background, it's indexing, and it might not get to it. And if at some point in time you want to know is anything happening, in the window at the very top, if you scroll down to Task Manager, it'll actually show you what it's doing. And so it's going through this, hasn't found anything. If you're like, you know what, let's just stop this, then what you should be able to do is right click it, and you can either cancel selected tasks, pause all, pause selected tasks, resume, any of those steps. And should we just cancel this? Cancel selected task. Yes, we don't want to do that. Okay. So that we don't waste any time or energy in the background doing that. Then what we need to do is we kind of got to get a feel for what's going on in this song. And so, so before we start moving things around, we're going to go to File, Save As, and just rename this, whatever the song name is, your name, mix. Great. So we can start mixing that, and we still have the original session as well. Now, we need to look through and kind of comb through to get an idea of what's what. In a good mix session, in a good and well set up mix session, the engineer is receiving everything they need the way it should be set up in terms of, color coding, track labeling, everything's edited, everything's nice and clean. In the real world, that's absolutely not the case. Unfortunately, most of the time when you receive sessions, they're messy. And so it takes a little bit of cleaning up. A couple things we can immediately do. If we go to the mix window, one of the things we're looking for is we're looking to see a couple of things that we need for our setup, right? So, we got our master fader. Great. We're going to look to see that each of these tracks are routed to an output somewhere. But if any mix information was already in the session, we basically want to drop it. Meaning, like, we don't necessarily want to start our mix from having all these plugins and things going on inside of it. So a couple easy things we can do. First, what we can do is over here off to the bottom left. If you don't see this window, just hit the little arrow at the bottom, this little guy right here, and it will open this up. What I'm going to do is I'll pull this list over this way so I can see it better. I'm going to zoom into the groups, and I'm just going to basically tell it, hey, listen, we want to delete all these groups. We want all these groups, delete active groups. We want all these groups cleared out. It's going to say, hey, are you sure you want to do that? Yeah, absolutely. Let's get these groups cleared out. And then on this list over to the left, we also want to check that there's nothing that we're not seeing. If it was like this with these little gray dots darkened, that means it's actually not visible in the session, or it's hidden. We want to make sure we see everything. So we do want everything selected. Okay. Then what we can do are a couple different steps. And the first one we can do is, let's go to the all group here. If we select the all group, everything is going to be affected by this. We can immediately hold Option, click on any fader, it's going to take us all to nominal. Then let's bring everybody down. From here, we can deselect all. We can hold Option again, click the master fader. It's going to take us to nominal. And our master output should be there, but everybody else needs to be brought back down. We want to be looking for a couple different things. We want to eliminate any plugins, any sends, and we also want to make sure that we don't have any automation written anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Option on anything that's not the master, because it won't work if you do it on the master. We're going to hold Option, and we're going to clear out, holding Option. I'm going to click on this and select No Insert. For Bank A, for inserts, those are our plugins. They're going to clear. I'm going to go to Bank B, No Insert. I'm still holding Option. Bank C, still holding Option. We're going to No Insert this whole thing. Sorry, I think it didn't catch up. Oh, got it. Warning. There's automation on that plugin. Yep, we still want to remove it because that's somebody else's mix information. Option. Again, No Insert. Option. No Insert. Now, technically, there are two banks of plugins, A through E. And if you go down over here, you'll also see inserts F through J. If they're not visible, you want to open those up just to make sure there's nothing in those banks. You should be able to scroll across the screen and not see any plugins up here at all. You shouldn't see anything. Okay, nothing inserted. Great. Now on the master, we're going to have to manually pull the ones on the master. So just No Insert, No Insert. Great. And now same thing for the buses or the bus sends. So these are sends A through E. Pick any one of them, hold Option, No Send. Now we're probably going to get more warnings about automation because, there's a lot of automation that gets written to the sends. Go down to the next one. Same thing. Down to the arrow. No Send. Now, after you do every one of these moves, you need to make sure that you're hitting Command S or at least going File Save. That's Command S. That way we're saving our progress as we go. Now notice banks A and B, these first two, kind of look a little different than the rest of them. If we hold Command and hit the arrow, it will condense them. That way they look like a list like this. And again, if we just take a peek across the way, we're just looking to see if there's anything anywhere else. Oh, there's one right here. We can hold Option just to get everybody else. There's a send on that one. Good. Please delete it. Great. That one looks good. Now, in the same way, though, we have a sends F through J. Go down to the bottom menu, sends F through J. We also need to look at these. Is there anything in sends F through J? It's this lane right here. We're going to look. As long as we're cleared out, we're good. Great. Okay. Now, we still need to clear automation, but before we do it, let's clear some routing. So as long as down here at the bottom, in the view for the mix window here, as long as we have I/O selected, we'll be able to visibly see our input-output options here. And what we want is we want all of our outputs for now to just go to the output, the main output 1 and 2, or main output left and right, based upon whatever your interface says. And so one easy way to know what output that should be is if we go to Setup, I/O, and we go look at the output tab. We can see it's called Monitor Left Right. Okay. Now we need to go to the Bus tab and see what that actual name is on the output channel here. You can see it in our master over here. It says 1, 2. Over here, notice that output name says 1, 2. It's routed to Monitor Left Right. So it needs to say 1, 2, and it should actually note Monitor Left Right. So if I were to go pick it, like if I were to go choose that output path, notice on my output label it says 1, 2 stereo, but it actually shows that Monitor Left Right. So we do know that that's the appropriate place to go. So what I'm going to do is hold Option again and send everybody to 1 and 2. So now everybody's going to go there. Now, what we should also be looking for is there's a couple indicators that are going to show us where auxes exist, and we actually want to clear them because we're going to set up our own ones and we're going to set up new ones. The auxes could have been submixes or they could have been effects. I see there's a click track aux in here. We want to clear them, but notice the aux symbol actually looks like this green arrow. So the master is this red symbol. The aux is actually this green arrow. If you have something that looks like this, it's MIDI, that little piano looking thing. And then all these other ones are little white waveforms. Those are all audio file or audio tracks. So what we really want to do is we want to look at the down in the mix window. We can see pretty clearly if we go down to the bottom, all these ones that have a down arrow right here, those are our auxes. We can click the first one, click the first of that in the nameplate, hold shift, click the last of that, and then just hold control, click. Control click is our right click for us on the Mac, and then we can just hit delete. Those auxes are going to clear, and then we can just go seek out any other auxes. It's like, oh, there's another aux. Control click or right click and delete. And let's see if we have any more. Looks like we have a drum bus one over here. Now, you could also do this off of this track list. So if you wanted to go over here, you could right click these as well and hit delete, so that every one of these down arrow tracks is being deleted. So we're getting rid of all those auxes, clearing them out. What we should be left with is either audio tracks, MIDI tracks, or the master. So that's what we see. Just audio. We got one MIDI track here and our master. Now, truth be told, if we don't need that MIDI in the mix, we might not want to even keep that MIDI track. But it might not be a big deal. Notice it's hidden at the moment, but if we open it up, it's actually not active and in use. So we could elect to say, you know what, this isn't even being used. Why bother? If they didn't send it to us, our client didn't ask for it, let's delete it so it's out of the way. Good, so we're moving right along. Now we also notice there's a lot of panning going on. If you look, you see these panners are all moved everywhere. So again, what we can do is if we hold Option, what you'll notice if you hold Option and you click these, it's going to do them one by one. What other thing we can do is we can go down to the nameplate, hold Option. It's going to select everybody. We can then hold Shift and Option and click on any one of those panners, Shift and Option, and it's going to zero out mostly everybody. What it didn't zero out, and you can see it here, is it didn't zero out anybody that was a stereo track that had a right panner. So again, I'm going to hold Shift Option, go to that right panner, clear it out. At this point, we should be able to look across the way and have no issues at all. Now, I noticed in this session, there's a couple of tracks that look kind of grayed out at the end, or they're italicized, should I say. This means they're inactive. Well, typically that denotes that they didn't want to use them, and it's just as easy to just remove them. Let's delete those so they're out of the way. So we're really just working hard to clear all these things out. We're also going to unmute anything that's muted, because if it was really meant to not be here, the client really should have just not sent it. And we might actually have to ask them specific details about that. In the last phase, I'm going to go hit Command equals. I'm going to go to the edit window. I'm going to open up my groups tab here and go to my all group. In this session on my view for my edit window, I don't want to see all this junk. I don't need sends. I don't need the IO. I do want the track color. That'd be helpful. So that's going to clear out some of those things that were here that we don't need. But there are a couple things that we do need to see. And what I'm going to do is with that group all selected, I'm going to click on the ruler here, switch to medium size for everybody. So now everybody's all the same size. Great. Oh, there's that missing track. It looks like it's a piece of this. I don't know why we'd be missing half of this track. Anyway, in this instance, this track is actually not useful, so that's fine. We'll just get rid of it altogether. But if we scroll up or anywhere on the left-hand side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch from, in my track view selector, I'm going to switch from waveform to volume. This is the most likely place that you're going to have automation written. And you can see some right here. And there's more a little bit down here. This is volume automations. A lot of times those are just kind of giving us a little bit of a bump in volume, or maybe in this instance, a little cut in volume. But the easy fix for that is we are just going to do one big sweeping select all and just hit the delete button on the keyboard. And that will clear any and all automation that was written to track. And now all those tracks are now cleared from automation. Now at this point in time, we can switch all of them to, if you just pick any one, this is our automation, essentially our automation selector. We can either put them in read or any of our automation write modes. For now, we're just going to tell them to all read. Great. Automation set up and flat, and those are good to go. Now I'm going to get us back to, actually one thing we could also check is you could check mutes for automation. I'm not seeing any, but if we wanted to be careful, just highlight the whole thing again, hit delete, go to pan, same thing. Just want to be careful, highlight the whole thing, hit delete. Shouldn't be any volume trims, but just in case there are, hit delete. And then we'll go back to waveform. So we'll end up back at waveform in our track view selector. And now we're looking at waveforms. The last real big phase of this, now that we've set all that up, is actually we have a couple things we really want to do. One of those, we got to get familiar with the session. And that might mean naming all of these tracks, making sure that the names match what we want to use. Sometimes they come in and they're really cryptic. They don't have good names. In this instance, this session is pretty fair. Kick, snare, overhead left, overhead right, tom 1, tom 2, hat, ride, room left, room right. These are all good so far. Then there's this kick duplicate, snare duplicate, overhead duplicate. Not sure what all those are supposed to be. So now, actually, this is my session, so I do actually know what these are. This is essentially just a kit 2. We did some tom work. We don't need all of these tracks technically. But just to make this easy, I'm going to double click on that nameplate. And I'm just going to call this kick B. So this is, just going to be my easy go-to. I'm going to hit Command and down, the down arrow, and it's going to toggle me to the next track. So this will be snare B. This will be overhead left. B, over right. B. So you can kind of see how this is working. Tom 1B, Tom 2B. So we're just cleaning all this up. Hat B. Great. Ride B. Room left B. Room right B. This is actually room center B, or room mono. That makes it a little confusing, so let's just call that mono, right? And then let me see what's going on with symbols. Symbols 01. Okay. This is bass. It doesn't need anybody's name on it because we don't care who they are. So there's 2 pianos. So piano 2, great. Okay. Piano room. I don't know whose room that's supposed to be. Piano 2 room. We're going to get a little more comfortable with these so we know. Again, it would be great if these were already done for us. So, we kind of want to coach whoever's setting these up to be able to do all that. So all the naming looks good for us. It gets a little dicey over here, somewhere about halfway through the track listing. It gets kind of confusing because now we're getting into guitar 1, E-guitar 1, E-guitar 4, E-guitar 4, copy 3, 4 copy. These really just need to be cleaned up and renamed. But when I tried to rename it E-guitar 2, it didn't seem to like that. And so, of course, I don't see any other E-guitar on there, so it should have just taken that just fine. So kind of jumping in again from there. Let's see what it says if we go to 2 again. Okay, yeah, that was fine. So, let's see, hold on. So, oops. Oh, yeah. Well, of course, I botched that already. So let me go back to the one that I called 2. This is actually more like E-guitar 5. Just a lot of stereo electric guitar going on with this session. Oops. And if we, again, just tidy that up, so we're just trying to understand it. So there's E guitar 1, E guitar 2, E guitar 3. This is actually E guitar 4. There's already somebody named that. Okay, so we are going to be 5. Oh, because this one's 4. This one should be, this one, oh, jeez, sorry. That gets us all kinds of messed up. The only thing I don't like about this is when you get them swapped, you can't easily fix them. S guitar 1, not exactly sure what that is, but we're going to go take a look. Go, I like the goes. Bass lead, this is a synth. I'm just going to call this synth as well. Synth 2, synth 3, because again, unless the artist is with me, you know, just numbers is completely fine. It's a lot easier for me to keep track of that way. I mean, you could always describe them. That's another way you could go. So we got Vox, basically Vox 1. Oops, hold on. Vox 2. These also could be titled a little differently. If they're like Vox verse or Vox chorus. I'm not sure what this is. Direct, let's see. Well, this is just going to be Vox 4. DBX 166. This could be Vox 5, but I'll put down in the notes DBX 166. I'm not sure what that means. Sure. DBX 118. This will be Vox 6. DBX 118. These are in reference to external devices. So I guess that's why they have those particular names. I noticed some faders, I think because we flipped to the automation temporarily, popped up. We can save that. Good. So we got all the naming set up. We're going to want to go through and edit and just double check the timing looks good, that everybody's vertical time. I couldn't tell you enough. Like the biggest things I tend to stress in a mix are timing, tuning, and tone. And those are really easy to say, but they're very hard to do. And the better you do them, the more money you'll make. Plus, of course, the better your mixes will be. But we really want to start looking vertically down the line to see how everybody's lining up. So I'm going to hold Option, click on the ruler over here on the track in the edit window, set everybody to micro. But notice when I do that, all these names are in the way. So just to kind of make that easy, I'm going to go to View, Clip, and I'm going to deselect where it says Name. And that should clear that front end. So now I can see that a little better. The other thing is my waveforms look a little small, so I can zoom in using this little up arrow right here. If I just want to kind of blow them up, they kind of look like they're clipping now, but I want to blow them up because I want to see down the lane inside of the grids. So I want to like see who's lined up, who's where, you know, who is where, who's supposed to be where. How does it all stack up? And you see like all these different rhythms that should line up. We want to make sure everybody's got a, you know, good vertical alignment. And then while we're going through that, we also want to make sure that we have adequate fades, you know, so the start of each section, I'm going to just be in slip mode. The start of each thing that enters, we're going to want to look and make sure that they're faded correctly, that they're cross faded correctly, that if we see any of these transition points right here, you know, we take a zoom in and say, all right, are these cross faded? Like what's going on from one track to the next right here? You know, and we really kind of need to get down in there. Now, if we don't know, you know, the fades could be very particular one way or the other. But if we just don't know, I mean, an easy way to go is to double click the magnifying glass, and you could just, triple click the magnifying glass, and we could just go 1, 2, 3 on the session, each file, and just hit Command F and just do a batch fade so that all those are getting batch faded. And that way we're just keeping track of making sure all their fades are done. So, you know, like as an easy example there, let me go ahead and regroup my kick because I deleted all my groups. I'm going to go set up my groups real quick. So I'm going to pick my first drum track, hold Shift, pick my last, and hit Command G. And now that is my drum group. So that's my first drum group. Great. Now I notice there's clear fades at the end. Those are very intentional. But I don't see exactly what all the other fades look like in the in-between. So I'm just going to highlight this whole thing and hit Command F. And it's going to give me my batch fade options. We can make adjustments to how long these fades transition. But in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, like, let's do 50 millisecond in, 50 millisecond out, and then a 10 millisecond crossfade if we need it. We just hit OK. And if it needs to adjust bounds because of the way that the clips line up, it'll do it on its own. But I do want to manually take a look at the fade in and actually take a listen to, what's that first entrance. So I don't have faders up yet for anybody, but in order to just get a sense of this, I could really just bring up drums to see what their first strike is. Great. Okay. So there it is. We get a first hit right here. You can see it. If we blow these up, right here, you can see is our first hit. Again, if we zoom this up a little bit here. And great. We have a little bit of dead space right here. We don't need it. We're just going to get rid of it. And we're just going to highlight over, hit Command F. And I like to dip it in. Great. Great. That part made its entrance. We're happy. Look below. If there's nothing before this, which there doesn't appear to be, that next set of drums is also going to have that same scenario. So I'm going to highlight I'm going to highlight that next set of drums. Hit Command G. This is drums 2. We're going to do the same thing. So just get rid of all this stuff. Now, if I go here and bring those ones up. Okay, great. They're also making an entrance. Slight problem immediately off the first beat of this song. And if you look down the way, you can see it. The first hit is clearly off. There's a clear flam. Now, if I scoot back and just push play from here, great. It sounds awesome. I'm actually going to just go ahead and crop this off and give this pretty much that same fade. And if I wanted to do these together just to make sure that they're as close to just being together as possible, could also do that. And man, but this one's actually pretty far off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this up and just bring them together and hit that Command F. I mean, it wouldn't be a big deal in some scenarios if it wasn't noticeable, but this is the first beat of the stinking song. Great. Awesome. We're good. Now we're going to want to continue through all of these tracks, combing through, looking at timing, looking at entrance points, looking at exit points. How are things entering? How are things exiting? Again, this is the mix prep. We're not yet ready to just jump in and start mixing. And we're also not in a hurry because if we do this part well, this will save us a lot in terms of the sound. Again, because timing, tuning, and tone are a big deal, we're going to need to look at everybody's starting point. Like I don't know that there's any real, let's see what this is. Actually, we don't have any volume on this. So there's something going on with this piano here. Oh, it's this one. We just bring it up to nominal just to take a peek. Ah, I see. Hold on. Let's see what happens. So a little bit of vibe with the drums should be like this. Okay, I get it. So some things are going to stay. So far so good. So what we're doing, if you notice, is we're starting to plan out some groups. We're grouping things that do belong together that should be edited together with our mix and edit groups. We're going to want to take a look at everybody's entrances, get those fades going. And then that's going to put us in a really good position to be ready to move on to things like color coding, and really setting everything else up. As soon as we have that, and we have good clean ins and the outs probably being the most important thing that we need to plan for, kind of trying to listen to who's supposed to be out last, like which track is supposed to make it all the way to the end. Normally there's an easy election, whoever has a really good ring out and doesn't have a lot of noise all the way to the end. In this instance, I could almost guarantee you it's going to be piano, because it's probably not going to be bass. I could bet you that the bass track has noise at the end of the tail. And once we add some compression on there, it's probably going to be noisy. So it's very likely that we're going to say, okay, well, last thing we're going to have fade out is going to be both the piano and this bass. So if we just kind of follow their fades together, they can, if you notice it's between the piano, oops, the wrong kind of fade, between the piano and the bass. They should look somewhat alike. We could also run those together, do them together, but in this instance, this is kind of how we're doing it. And I don't know if in this piano, oh, sorry, we don't have this one up. It's just a question mark of whether or not we want to hear the pedal lift at the very, very end or not. You know, and if we don't, if that's not cool, then we're just going to cut it off. And then we're just going to look down the line and make sure nobody else is, there's no reason for anybody else to hang out. If we're saying, all right, those are going to be the ones with the last note. You can see there's not a lot of last notes going on here. And we're making those elections between clean ins and clean outs. And that's pretty much it. That's exactly what we need to be doing in our mix prep in Pro Tools before we really start mixing.